welcome back. Caitlin here. Today we're talking math curriculum for kindergartners. So this was our first year homeschooling, and I have a kindergartner, and so I want to share with you what curriculum we picked, how I picked it, why I picked that one, what we thought about it as we're wrapping up the school year here and finishing up his first year. So a little background is that I am a former high school math teacher. Math is something that I love. I'm very passionate about it, and I want to make sure that my kids have a really good, deep understanding of math. I don't want them just to be able to fill out a workbook and answer a bunch of questions. I want them to actually understand the why and how behind math. So when I was looking for a math curriculum, I was really particular, and I looked at a bunch of different options, and I had a lot of things that I wanted. I wanted it to be very hands-on. I wanted them to really get a hands-on manipulative experience. I did not want it to just be a workbook where they just sat down and did a workbook. If that's your jam, that's fine, but that's not mine. So I looked at a lot of different options, but RightStart Math was what really intrigued me, and that is what we ended up going with, and so that's what this video is about. The biggest thing that drew me to RightStart Math was the manipulatives and the hands-on approach. That was very important to me, and so when I saw that it was an incredibly manipulatives-based program, that was like a big light bulb, like, yes, I want to look into this some more. It's also very game-based. If you've watched my Logic of English review, that is the curriculum I picked for our English, and it is very game-based. I really wanted something that my 5-year-old would not have to be sitting and just doing worksheets or doing a bunch of just seat work. I wanted him up and playing. And so while RightStart Math is not doing lots of like hopscotch and bingo and stuff like Logic of English, it does have a lot of card games, and we really love that. And in fact, the card games for the most part replace worksheets, and so he's getting that review without having to do a bunch of worksheets. Also, while I was researching RightStart Math, I read several reviews, and there were multiple reviews from other high school math teachers turned homeschoolers or college math professors that very highly recommended RightStart Math. And I was like, these are my people. They also are really recommending RightStart Math. This sounds like it's perfect for us. So that is what we ended up going with. There is a focus on having a really deep understanding of numbers. So it's the first maybe half of RightStart Level A, which is their version of kindergarten. It is, instead of saying the number 12, they actually learn to say 110, 2. Instead of saying 37, they learn to say 310, 7, which is a little bit strange for all of us who did not grow up doing that, but it really helps them to start seeing numbers as sets of 10 instead of just the number 12, and not really understanding what 12 means or where it comes from, but learning that that's a 10 plus 2 more. Later on, they of course go back to saying 12 and saying 37, but for the beginning portion, they do a lot of that laying the groundwork, laying that foundation, so they really get an understanding of what the numbers mean. There's also, and I think this is wonderful, there is an abacus that you use just about every single lesson, and the kids use this as they're learning, groupings of 10, learning to count to 100, skip counting, learning to multiply and divide, which in kindergarten we touched on multiplication and touched on division like about one lesson each just to introduce it, but I'm not like, it doesn't teach that in full in kindergarten, but we use this for just about everything, and it has become such a good tool. And so even though we have not learned how to add large numbers in kindergarten, my son knows how to use the abacus, and so if he's trying to add two larger numbers together, he'll run and get his abacus and use this to add them together. So he sees it as a tool. I actually got little small versions that RightStart Math sells, and I got one I have a 4-year-old as well who he loves to participate. So we actually have 2 abacuses, because even though he's not doing school yet, he wants to participate too. So anyway, I got them each a small one to put on in their little backpack that we take like to church and on trips, because they use it for all sorts of stuff. RightStart Math Level A, what comes with it? What do you need? So you've got a teacher's manual, which is the spiral bound book, which tells you, the teacher, what to say and what to do. There is a very thin, small workbook This does not, you don't use this every day. It's not very often that you use this. Most of the time, the review and the practice is done with the manipulatives and with the games. There is a small workbook that comes with it. So you get the teacher book and the workbook. There is this other book called the Math Card Games, and this explains all of the card games. So you may see in this book, at the end of the lesson, it'll say play a specific game. So then you go to the math card game book and you look up that game and it gives you all of the instructions. There's also a DVD in the back that gives instructions. I have not used that. Most of them I've been easily able to figure out on my own, but there's this book. And I've done an unboxing video that shows everything. So I'm gonna link that. I'm not gonna sit here and show you every single piece because it's a lot. And that's the point I wanna make, is that it's a lot. This is a very manipulatives heavy curriculum. So you have your books, you have your abacus, you also have this math balance, which they use for figuring out things being like that 10 and 2 5s are the same. They also use it for weight later on. And then there's bunches of other small pieces. I have made a separate video showing how I organize this stuff because there's a lot of it. But you've got your money, you've got tangrams, there's a clock, a very cool clock, by the way, where when you turn the minute hand, the hour hand moves with it. It's not separate like a lot of clocks. You've got things like tally sticks, you have tiles that they use for lots of sorting, centimeter cubes, lots of cards that go with all the different card games. There's geometry solids. There's these geo boards that they use rubber bands on, ruler, whiteboard, marker, all these different little cards, fraction cards, stuff like that. So the way RightStart Math works is you get the books, and then there's also a manipulatives kit that you can get along with the books. You don't have to. If you wanted to try to gather all these manipulatives yourself, you can, but I found it to just be easier to just purchase the kit. So I had every single thing that they said I needed. I didn't have to go try to find all the various and sundry pieces from different places. I just felt it was easier to just get it all. When you buy that kit one time, and that will last your child like the whole rest of their RightStart Math career. So you don't have to continue purchasing that every single time. So when you get the kit, there are a few things you don't use in A. I assume we'll use them later on. I mean, I know we will, but I don't know if we'll use them in B or when we'll use them. But it's a lot of stuff that comes with it. And you use a big majority of it, but you don't use everything. So some of the topics that are covered, you start off with subitizing, which if you're not sure what subitizing is, that is when you are able to look at a set of things and tell how many there are without counting them. So that would be like, instead of looking at my fingers and saying 1, 2, 3, you could just look at my fingers and say, oh, you're holding up 3 fingers. So that is something that we had actually worked on in his homeschool preschool with a separate little math book that I knew that I had read that was a really good foundation for RightStart Math. And so we had done a bunch of subitizing, but that's what it starts with. There's sorting, patterns, matching, learning about tally marks, how to write tally marks. They learn how to write their numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. They learn a little bit of geometry sprinkled in here and there. They learn about parallel and perpendicular. They learn about rectangles and squares and circles and the geometric solids and halves, like taking a rectangle and cutting it in half. They learn their days of the week and their months of the year. If they don't already know that, we already knew that, so we kind of skipped through that. They learn about even and odd. They learn about combinations that make up 5. So 0 and 5, 2 and 3, 4 and 1. They learn about then combinations that make up 10. That is where we spend a lot of time. There's a big chunk of time spent on the combinations to 5 and the combinations to 10, because that is something that we really want them to have a good foundation on before they continue moving on. Let's see, we learn about writing equations as we're starting to learn about adding and those combinations that make 5 or make 10. We learn about money. They learn about the different coins and their values. They learn a little bit of measurement, inches, centimeters, measuring length, weighing things. fractions, time. They learn about hours and minutes. So it's got a whole lot of different things that they learn. The bulk of it being learning how to, that introduction to adding is really by the end. They're able to add pretty easily, and learning all those combinations up to 10. And so that is kind of an overview. I mean, there's 132 lessons, and it's not read through every single one, but that's kind of like the high points. So some people feel like their kids are ready to move on, and you can test on their website. So some kids will start in level B. I really wanted to create that foundation of all these basic skills to make sure we got that, because we're not in any rush. He's just in kindergarten. I don't feel like there's any need to push. And so I was fine for us to start out with a nice, slow math curriculum. So we started in A, and that has been perfect for us. This has taken us the full year of kindergarten. So like I said, there's 132 lessons, and we do roughly a lesson a day. I don't think it's ever taken us 2 days to get through a lesson. Sometimes we'll do 2 lessons in a day. Sometimes we get through one like super fast, so we just go ahead and do the next one. But most of the time we just do 1 lesson a day. And so we will be finishing this up at the end of the year. And so it's been a good amount of time to get through, take 1 school year to get through 1 level. So my thoughts are, I love this curriculum. I love the math understanding that it is giving my son. I love that he's getting a lot of that foundational information. He's really connecting the dots. There have been several times that he will just come up with something on his own that when he's playing, and I'll be like, how did you know that? And he's like, well, I just thought about the abacus in my head and it made sense. Or, it's just things that he's taken from RightStart Math and is able to connect to other, like playing with his money in his cash register, or adding things together that I would not have expected him to do. So it's really given him that good math knowledge that I wanted. There are some pros and cons. So let me share with you what I feel like those are. The pros are that it's hands-on, that the manipulatives give a lot of different methods of doing things. So because we have all these manipulatives, if we're doing a concept and it said to use the abacus for something and he's kind of struggling, I can pull out the tiles and we can set them up a different way using the tiles. Or I can pull out the little number pieces and we can build, if he's having a hard time figuring out how to write the number 22, we can pull those out and take the 20 and take the 2 and lay them on top of each other and see, oh, that's 22. He uses the abacus all the time if he's, struggling with a specific concept, because then he can move it with his fingers and gets that tactile input there. And so I just love that there's so many different manipulatives that he's able to use. I think it's a huge pro that it gives such a thorough math understanding. Yes, it may be a little bit different than how we were taught, but I feel like it's going to give a much deeper understanding than most people come out of school having. And the lessons are basically scripted out for you, which is really nice. I'll show the inside of the book in a few minutes, but it tells you, exactly what to do, what the answers are, what to ask. It gives, I'll show this up close a minute, but here's the lesson. And then there's also side notes out to the side to explain things further for the teacher, or give you some other things that you can say if your child is struggling. So that's really nice. The cons are not necessarily cons for me, but they are, I know, cons for other people. And so I wanted to share those. One of them is that there are a lot of manipulatives. Yes, that was a pro, but it can also be a con. If you get very overwhelmed, I have several friends who were like, that is too overwhelming for me. I can't deal with all that. That could be a con for you. It is a lot. You can see the video where I show how I store everything, because it's a lot. It takes a lot of organization to keep up with it. There is a lot of stuff, and if that overwhelms you, then that would be a problem. Also, if you do school on the go a lot, if you're in the car, if you travel often, if you are in an RV, this might not be a perfect fit for you, because it does, like, you have to get out a bunch of stuff for most lessons. And so it's not really gonna be so easy for them to be sitting in the backseat of your van. You know, it's not just like a workbook where they're sitting there doing their workbook. They have a bunch of stuff that goes with it. So that could be a con. We stay home. We do our school at home at the table, so that's not a problem for us. It's not like super colorful and fun. Like, the workbook is not colorful. There's not cutesy pictures. There's not fun little stories. I know that there's other math curriculums that have lots of like cute little, you know, colorful, fun things. I prefer colorful and fun, but I'm okay with it not having that. Like, I guess I'm saying I value the math knowledge that they're learning through RightStart so much so that it doesn't bother me that it's not colorful. I mean, they're playing, like, it feels like toys to them because they have all these manipulatives. So my son has not had a problem with it at all. But I know because I looked at lots of curriculums, and there's some that are like completely story based, have lots of stories, and there's some that have like all these cute, like all their manipulatives are like in the shapes of flowers and bumblebees and, you know, just cute stuff like that, which is kind of like, I like that. I think that's super cute, but that's not RightStart Math, and that's okay, but I just want to let you know. And then also it can be kind of pricey. That's probably the biggest con, that when people see it are like, oh man. So the workbooks themselves, the teacher book and the workbook are, I feel like, fairly on par for a typical math curriculum, but it's the manipulatives. The whole manipulatives kit is around $200. So if you get your books, so the first year, you get your books, your manipulatives, that's about $300 for your curriculum, which compared to a lot of other math curriculums, that is a lot. However, once you've bought the manipulatives kit one time, you don't have to buy it anymore. So the next year, it's just, you need a new teacher book, you need a new workbook. That's it. So it's a one-time kind of pricey purchase. Again, for me, that was fine. I was completely fine with that because I very much value this curriculum and want that math education for my kids. And I knew that the manipulatives were going to last him every single year. Plus I have 2 other children that will be going through the program. So it was just an investment, and I was okay with that. But I know, you know, you may see the price tag and be like, oh man, I can get a math workbook for like $30 off Amazon. And that's fine. Maybe that's your thing. But for me, putting the money into it to get that math foundation was worth it to me. But I just wanted to point that out so that you're kind of aware of it. All right, so I'm gonna turn the camera around, show you an example lesson so you can kind of see how it looks. Okay, so here is one example lesson. This is lesson 64, so about halfway through the curriculum. And as I was saying, not very like colorful and exciting, but it's not necessary because you have all these fun manipulatives. So at the top, it tells you what you're going to be learning and tells you what materials you need to get out. The first part is always a warm-up that goes through and has a couple of warm-up questions or activities from previous lessons. Then you get into the lessons. This one is counting with tally marks. So you're supposed to pour out a bunch of tiles and ask them to guess how many, then have them count them by writing tally marks, which is a skill that they had already learned. Okay. And then ask them, okay, now that you've counted them, how many were there? So then they take their tiles that we counted and we kind of split them into groups of 5. 5 and a space 5 to go along with our tally marks, which also goes along with our abacus, because each line has 10 beads. 5 are blue, 5 are yellow, just to really help them visualizing things in groups of 5 and in groups of 10. So after they've done their tiles this way, then they also do it on the abacus this way, and then they take their place value cards and they build their number. In the example, it was 23. It would be whatever you had when you poured them out for your child. All right, and so then it says do it again with another amount of tiles. Then you play this go to the dump game, which is a game that is kind of similar to Go Fish. They just call it Go to the Dump, and it's listed in the card game book, which I showed. And this is basically your practice for the day. So it is a card game similar to Go Fish, but that is how your child is practicing. And then there's not a worksheet very often. Like I showed you, the workbook is very small, but this particular day there was a worksheet. So they're adding numbers together. and so they practice that. And then there's always just a short review question or two at the end. And all of the lessons follow basically the same format. So a warm-up, they start a new topic and practice it a little bit, sometimes a worksheet, and then a conclusion, or sometimes a game, or sometimes both. Warm-up, learning about how long is an hour, there's a game in the math book, and then a review. So they all kind of follow the same. It's always a 2-page layout, and it all has the same idea there. Okay, and that's it. That is my sort of quick-ish, actually wasn't as quick as I wanted it to be, but kind of quick review of RightStart Math. I did not show you everything. Like I said, there's tons of pieces that go with it. So watch my unboxing video if you want to see every single thing that comes with it, because I do have that separate. But that's kind of a review. I highly recommend this curriculum if you're not one that gets overwhelmed by all the things that come with it. If that doesn't bother you, then I say go for it. If that bothers you, you need to pick something else. Or if you school on the go, you need to pick something else. But otherwise, I think this is a great curriculum. My son loves it. I love it. And I feel like it's been a good fit for our family.